PSARA this year has been focusing on a strategy that we developed at the end of last year. We are keenly aware, and it's interesting because polling is demonstrating this, that Medicare Advantage is very popular among Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, seniors. And we think that the only way we're going to ultimately stop the corporatization of Medicare, the corporate takeover of Medicare, and all of us know at this point that more Medicare beneficiaries are in the private plans than are in the public plan. The only way we're going to ultimately take it over is to level the playing field and make it just as easy and just as financially viable to be in traditional Medicare as it is to be in Medicare Advantage. What we have to do is we have to make traditional Medicare a one-stop shop, just like Medicare Advantage is. A person who goes into Medicare Advantage, and they oftentimes run into real problems when they develop complicated conditions, but the upfront costs for Medicare Advantage are less for Medicare Advantage beneficiaries than they are for traditional Medicare beneficiaries. The reason why is because we, in traditional Medicare, have to purchase supplemental insurance in Medicare Part D. And the only way that we're going to be able to win people back into public Medicare, which is a better program in terms of quality of care because of the choice that you have and the far less amount of prior authorization and delays and denials, the only way that we're going to win people over is to make it financially viable for people to do that. We now have, there's a recent article, in fact, in the article in the May edition of the Retiree Advocate that just came out, there is an article by two women of color, Ann Watanabe from our PSARA and Claudia Fegan, who is with PNHP, but also is a medical director of a network in Chicago and Cook County that provides health care for primarily low-income people, predominantly people of color, in which they laid out the numbers. And the numbers are that about 50% of white people are in traditional Medicare. The numbers for people of color is much higher for people that are in Medicare Advantage, significantly higher in percentages. And we know the reason why. And it has everything to do with what's going to be inequity in income in our country for people of color. So if we want to stop this corporate takeover of Medicare, we are going to have to make traditional Medicare a one-stop shop where people can get traditional Medicare, where there's a cap on out-of-pocket costs. Hello? Oh, good. Hi, Tanya. Mike, you're not muted, so you're coming across. There you go. We're going to have to make it a one-stop shop. And we're going to have to eliminate the necessity to purchase supplemental insurance. We're going to need a cap on out-of-pocket expenses. And we're going to have to offer dental, vision, and hearing. So that would be a level playing field. And we believe thoroughly that if we were able to get there, that people would make the rational choice and choose traditional Medicare because you have a broader network of medical providers that you can reach out to. You don't have the kind of prior authorizations that you have with Medicare Advantage. And it's a system that really does more empower the beneficiary and their medical providers to make the decisions, the ultimate decisions, about what kind of health care they need. So we've been waging a campaign, and we came to this after a couple of years of working on this issue and then realizing, oh my God, if we don't do that, we're going to lose this. And that's as simple as that. We are going to lose it unless we level the playing field. So what we have done in the last year is we've done several things. Number one, we have crafted a letter to President Biden with copies going to PSARA and the ranking administrator for CMS with a program for leveling the playing field. We have the advantage of being able to quote President Biden, who in December of 23, that shows you how old I am. In 2023, talked about the need to level the playing field between traditional Medicare and Medicare Advantage. They just haven't done anything about it. We laid out in this letter the steps, and we're circulating that letter to organizations and individuals to sign on to the letter. And we'll be sending that letter out, and we're going to work on having someone who we can send it to who actually has the president's ear. We are also, just recently, in April, issued a Medicare primer that was dedicated to Adi Barkan and with a forward by Representative Pramila Jayapal that lays out the case for what we have to do about Medicare. And we have sent that primer, and it's 56 pages, a hard copy, and it's also on our website electronically. And the letter that I just mentioned is on our website as well. If any of you are interested in signing on to the letter, it is on our website, which is simple, PSARA.org. We have sent that primer to the entire Congressional Progressive Caucus, progressive senators, our entire congressional delegation. We've sent it to the chairs of every legislative district in Washington, and we've sent it to every hard copies. We've sent it to every chair of state Democratic parties throughout the country, to all 50 Democratic chairs. And we are also willing to send it out to other people. Mike, I think we sent one to you, if I'm not mistaken, or several to you. And I don't think we sent it to you because you haven't asked for it. And you're not a big fan of leveling the playing field anyway. But we are circulating that as widely as we can. We will probably issue another pamphlet about racial equity and Medicare Advantage, and how Medicare Advantage is not only not improving the issue of racial inequity in our healthcare system, but is exacerbating it because they are getting a higher proportion of people of color into Medicare Advantage, which means they're in limited networks, all of the things that we know about Medicare Advantage. We continue to do our educational program. We'll be doing a webinar on July, give you the date here, on July the 9th on moral injury. The title of the webinar is Medicare Advantage driving your medical provider to despair? That's the title of the webinar. And that's the campaign that we're waging. And we're basically a regional organization within Washington State, but we are working as much as we can with other national allies to try and win this battle to stop the corporate takeover of Medicare. I think that I'll stop there and welcome any questions you might have.
Yeah, I'd be interested in Anna's perspective on that. I heard you, Anna, and Kate express concerns about the level of the playing field. What are they?
Well, thank you, Mike, for asking, and thanks, Robbie, for really laying out the problems with Medicare Advantage. I couldn't agree with you more with the real threat that Medicare Advantage poses to Medicare. I mean, that we agree on. But I have two questions for you. And one is, how will level the playing field be any different than the idea of a public auction? And we know the problems with a public auction, right? Because we can never compete with the private health insurance, or a public system can never compete with for-profit health insurance industry. And secondly is, how is leveling the playing field going to be any easier than achieving Medicare for all? Okay. And the reason why I ask that question is because even if once, say that we do achieve this level of the playing field, which would be fantastic, I mean, we'd still be stuck with private health insurance, right? Despite a massive fight. So those are my two questions. Well, I'm just gonna quote Wendell Potter on this. Wendell Potter said, if we could actually achieve leveling the playing field, it would be the end to Medicare Advantage. Okay, yeah. I'm just quoting Wendell. Okay. Well, our theory, our underlying theory is, if we level the playing field, and I said this in what I said, that people will make the rational choice. And the rational choice is, if I can go to any provider I want to, and if I don't have to deal with delays and denials, and I can get all the same benefits that I can get from a private insurance company, and not have to deal with a private insurance company, they will make the rational choice. Now, you don't have that kind of belief. Well, I guess we'll have to find out, because we are not going to be able to get rid of Medicare Advantage at this point without leveling the playing field. We're not going to do it because it's too popular. It is extremely popular. That's not an exaggeration. That's the facts. Now, why do we think it will be easier to get level the playing field? Is there a more rational or a more likely route to leveling the playing field? And that's because it is market-based. We're not attacking Medicare Advantage. We're saying that people should get a choice. The title of our primer is Give Medicare Beneficiaries a Real Choice. Right now, they don't have a choice. If they are in the moderate to low-income category, which a majority of Medicare beneficiaries are, the rational choice for them is Medicare Advantage. And if we were to attack Medicare Advantage and say, no, we want Medicare for all, many of them would turn against us. But by saying that we're going to give them a choice, we're actually saying to people, you're going to have a real choice between two programs, one public and one run by insurance company, and you get to decide. Yeah, that's our thinking. I think you think that it somehow is politically viable to win Medicare for all, but you are going to have opposition from most Democrats and most independents and all Republicans, as opposed to leveling the playing field, which is something that many of them can agree to because it's only equitable. It's only fair. So it appeals to the fairness notion that people carry with them. Right, Robbie, I'm not arguing that some Democrats and some Republicans will support this, but you are never going to get the support from the insurance company, and the insurance company is going to fight you just as hard to maintain Medicare Advantage and the advantages that they have than they would for Medicare for all. They're going to fight just as hard because they get twice as much money from Medicare than they do from an employer-sponsored health plan. So they're going to fight tooth and nail. I don't disagree with that, but we can overcome that opposition if it's isolated to the insurance industry. If it's the insurers saying, we're wanting it, and what we know is they're wanting to protect their profits. Look, Anna, I don't expect to persuade you. I fully understand that you don't agree with that, and that's okay. But we believe that this is a winning strategy, and evidently, evidently right now, even the Progressive Caucus doesn't believe that putting Medicare for all in their aspirational document, their priorities, is politically viable. Yeah, so our friends, people like Pramila, who we are very close to, and Pramila's going to reintroduce her, expanded and improved Medicare for all bill in 2025. She's not going to let it lie. But the reality is, Biden will never go for it, but Biden will go for level the playing field. He's already said it when PSARA testified to become the director, or whatever he is, of HHS. He talked about leveling the playing field. The thing is, they've never done it. And that's what we're going to follow. The reason they don't do it is because there's such huge money involved, and that's from the insurance companies. And the insurance companies are going to fight you tooth and nail no matter what you do, and you might as well fight for the bold, program that we want rather than an incremental change. At any rate, we're not going to convince each other, I agree, but I think Lloyd has that either way the insurance company is going to fight this, and if we ever should achieve a level playing field, the advertising on the part of the insurance companies is going to be so extensive, they're going to clog the airwaves with their advertising just the way they do now. And how are we ever going to explain to the public that they have the option of level playing field Medicare? And it's going to take an incredible amount of money to accomplish this. And I was just wondering, Anna and Rob, are we working together with PNHP closely, or are these two separate sort of streams of getting at the same goal? I mean, I hope that we're combining efforts and that we're all working together. We are. Yeah, well, I can tell you that the chair of PNHP Washington is on our level playing field organizing committee, and yes, we are part of a group that includes PNHP, Social Security Works, and other organizations that have adopted the level of the playing field model, agree that that's the direction we have to go, and we're working closely with them. Great. Anna, you should answer for yourself on that. I agree with you. I think that they're full steam ahead with that. How do we plan to accomplish it, though? I mean, it requires a larger budget for CMS, and that budget requires congressional approval. And if the senators and the Congress people are receiving campaign contributions from the insurance industry, they're not going to go for this. So, Lloyd, what we know are the following things. One, that per beneficiary, Medicare Advantage is 3% more expensive than is traditional Medicare. Right away, we know that. We also know there have been several studies, the most recent being the Schaefer Institute at the University of Southern California, which is a more business-oriented research tank, and they estimated the amount of overpayments to Medicare Advantage in 2023 was $88 billion. Right, PNHP did a study and estimated that the amount of overpayments to Medicare Advantage in 2023 is between $80 billion and $140 billion. So what we say in our letter to President Biden is that these overpayments have to stop, and there has to be a clawback on what is going on with fraud and abuse by the Medicare Advantage plan. That's another stream of revenue that can help to fund the program that we're talking about. In terms of how much more expensive it will be, at this point, we don't have that number. We don't know what that means, but what we do know is that Medicare Advantage is costing the system more than traditional Medicare is. For approximately the same number of beneficiaries by 3%. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm not part of the problem here. I'm just trying to suggest that we need to get more legislators who are on board with this. I've always said that the people elect their representatives, and the representatives do what the money tells them to do. And what I'm concerned about is that they're just going to vote for whatever the money tells them to do. We have to get new legislators in Congress.
I don't disagree. Part of what we are. We are a grassroots organization, right? I mean, we go out, we meet, we have an organizing project right now going on in Pierce County in Washington, which is the second most populated county in Washington, building a PSARA there. This is an organizing task. And most of us come out of the labor movement, and we're organizers. And that's what we do. So we are, at the same time that we are operating on a policy level at the federal level, we are doing the kind of grassroots work of educating and building that we need to do in order to bring people around. So just before this phone call, I was donating to a person who's running in the 6th Congressional District. A viable candidate, Derek Kilmer, who is a business Democrat, has stepped down. And we got a race going on, and we have a progressive that's running who is a state senator who is very much on board with leveling the playing field, ultimately with Medicare for all, Emily Randall. And so we are working like hell to try and get her elected. She's running against the woman who was the former state land commissioner, who, as a result of the pressure that we're bringing, is now also talking about leveling the playing field. Now, we had doubts about her, but she's now come on the record as doing that. So we have to do that. We have a strong presence in the 6th Congressional District. We are building at the same time that we're trying to operate at the policy level. So I don't think there's any easy answers to this. We have to elect people and then hold them accountable. I don't disagree with you at all about that, Lloyd.
Just incidentally, I've been recording this, but did not ask anybody's permission. How do you feel about this? It's a wonderful back and forth, but you may not want this spread beyond this group.
No problem. I didn't object. I didn't leave the meeting as a result.
I'll stand by what I say. Thank you. Yeah, I said okie dokie. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Go ahead. Jump in. If you want to remove the private aspect, then you have to remove their incentives to be involved, and the bottom line is profits. So if, and I'm going to use a lot of dirty words here, meaning if you want to move to nationalized medicine or socialized medicine or a completely public delivery of healthcare, and you want to remove the private side, then it's simple. You tax the hell out of them. But when you bring them to the table, you say, look, the tax is not going to be immediate. What we're going to do is we're going to gradually tax you until you no longer have an incentive, because we're going to remove all your profits. And so you will be allowed to gradually get out of the marketplace. And until you give them that kind of motivation that they have to get out of the marketplace, then these discussions aren't going to go anywhere. And so, again, number one, we want to have socialized medicine. We want to nationalize the industry, and that's what we have to do to get them out. I've worked for a long time in the public sector. I dealt with, for years, as an attorney and economist, on public utility regulation. And basically what we're doing is we want healthcare to be a public or common good, and we want it delivered as such to us. Well, again, the public utility concept is, it's just that. It's a public entity that is going to be regulated by the government. And those concepts have been around for over 150 years. The courts have recognized them for 150 years. It's just we've allowed the private sector to go after money. When they find that they can make money, then they invest. Again, take away the incentive, get them to the table. By the way, we can't ostracize the insurance companies, the insurance agents, and all the other aspects. We've got to get them to the table and have them agree that socialized medicine is where we're going to go. How do they want to do it with us is the question.
I just need to comment, Keith. At this point, they're making huge profits off of Medicare. I mean, you've got one of the largest insurers who has dropped selling private insurance outside of the public insurance because they're making so much money. There was a big fight this year because the Biden administration decided that the rate increase that they were going to receive for the next 12 months is going to be 3.5%. And the private insurance industry was screaming bloody murder about the fact that that was not going to be enough because their costs are going up. And they lost. And we won. And they're not getting it. Now, it's a tepid victory. I don't disagree, Anna. It's a very tepid victory. But the reality is that their costs are increasing, and they really were. I mean, they were pissed and are pissed. And there is the expectation that there's going to be big money going into the Trump campaign as a result of it. So it is absolutely true that we have to squeeze them like crazy. And the only way we're going to squeeze them is by Medicare beneficiaries having a choice for their own pocketbook that is different than going with the private insurance industry, because no one loves insurance companies in this country. If you were to list some of the least popular corporations in this country, it's the insurance industry. But right now, in our view, and others may disagree, in our view, we have maybe 3-4 years before Medicare becomes totally privatized. The Republican plan, if Trump is elected and if they gain control, is to make Medicare Advantage the choice that people have to opt out of when they go into Medicare. That was a Heritage Foundation proposal that has been adopted by the Republicans. If that happens, Medicare Advantage is even going to have more Medicare beneficiaries. We have to make it possible, financially possible. Look, we're out there dealing with people. Just yesterday, or no, Monday, I spent time with a brother who is active with PSARA, who retired from state employment. He cannot afford to be in traditional Medicare. That's just the reality. He wants to be. He can't afford it, and he can't get out now because he's got health conditions, and there is no guaranteed issue for supplemental insurance if he could afford it. So we better have a strategy that is both midterm and long-term. And our midterm strategy of trying to get the whole banana at one time is going to fail because they are going to take control of Medicare totally if we don't give people a choice, a real choice. And that is the reality that we're facing. And if you don't believe me, just go to a senior center and have a forum and hear what people are saying and hear why they're choosing Medicare Advantage. Go out and listen to people. The moderate, I spoke last Friday night to a gathering of about 200 people of color. They were primarily Asian Pacific Islanders, but many others, and they were listening intently to what I had to say. But the reality is many of them had to choose Medicare Advantage.
And that, I mean, we're all, I think, on the same page. One of the things that gets me is when I talk to seniors groups, where they get confused is as soon as you say the word Medicare, they think of the government program.
That's right.
Rid of Medicare Advantage, you just say, folks, the choice is, do you want to have healthcare paid for by private industry insurance, or would you want to have healthcare delivered to you as a public good?
Right.
Move the conversation away from the confusing aspects. That's why, Bernie, I agree with them. Medicare for all, they understand. Medicare Advantage, seniors are fairly confused over that.
Right. Ro Khanna has legislation that calls for not letting the private insurance industry use the term Medicare. He wasn't able to get a hearing because the Republicans, control the agenda right now. But I don't disagree with you. There is total confusion. People really do believe when they're in Medicare Advantage that they're in Medicare. You're right about that.
Anna's had her hand up for a while. So, just a couple of points. The most important one is that Medicare is becoming totally privatized, and that's the reason why I keep focusing on the traditional Medicare part of it, because that's being privatized as well, and it will be privatized according to CMS by 2030. But let's take a look at Medicare Advantage and the people that are choosing Medicare Advantage, and I agree with you 100%. I spent a lot of my time speaking with senior groups, and I have spoken with senior groups that are all Chinese, and we speak through an interpreter, and they get it. They understand the threat that Medicare is under, but no senior understands the difference between, I shouldn't say no seniors, but very few understand the difference between Medicare Advantage and traditional Medicare. When people are on Medicare, they just think, oh, they're on Medicare, and if you ask them, are you on traditional or are you on Medicare Advantage, they do not know the difference. It takes a lot of questioning to figure out what it is that they're on. But leave that aside. Why is it that only 52% of people are on Medicare Advantage if it is so much less expensive? Why? Well, I will tell you why. One is because the people that are on traditional Medicare stay on traditional Medicare because either they can, because just as you said, they are white people with money, or they have to. And so there's going to come a time where the Medicare Advantage group, I like to think of it like a pie, will reach its limit of the number of people that they can actually get on Medicare Advantage, because there will always be people that will need to be on traditional Medicare because they either have the money and they will continue to take Medicare, traditional Medicare, or because they're dual eligibles and they don't have the money, but Medicaid will pay for their supplemental plan, or because they're sick and they need to stay on traditional Medicare. And so Medicare Advantage is never going to be 100%. It will never be 100%. It just will not be. Now, what's happening, even if you have leveled the playing field where you have the rational choice, and I'll tell you, most people do not make rational choices, but that doesn't matter. The problem is that we are taking our focus away from what is happening to traditional Medicare, which is being privatized under our nose. And, through the Medicare Savings Program, through the ACO-REACH, through all of these value-based schemes that CMMI is pushing through, that is privatizing traditional Medicare. So in the end, we're going to have a level playing field for the private insurance industry. That's what we're headed towards. Whether you're on Medicare Advantage or traditional Medicare, people on traditional Medicare are being aligned through CMS without the knowledge or consent into these ACOs. And these ACOs, and I understand that not everybody in PHP and not everybody in Social Security and not Donald Berwick, they love ACOs, but ACOs are privatizing. They're inserting usually profit-seeking middleman between Medicare and the provider, and between Medicare and the beneficiary. And so we need to think about how traditional Medicare is being privatized as well, because great, you give people the rational choice, they will choose traditional Medicare, but then they don't know that without their knowledge or consent, just like what's happening with ACO-REACH, and I know that ACO-REACH is going to sunset out in 2026, but I will tell you that CMMI is either going to change the name or just take all of those beneficiaries and put them into the Medicare Savings Program and continue that privatization of traditional Medicare. And we need to think about that as well. And I think that's it. Thanks. And I love the idea of this public utility concept. Yeah, but I can't see the private insurance company coming to the table voluntarily. They're just not going to do that.
Not unless we make it less profitable for them, which is part of the focus on the overpayments which are going on and trying to crack down on that and making it more difficult for them to take the profits they're making. But they're not going to come to the table. As long as Wall Street sees them as a good investment, which it does now, they're going to continue on and try and find ways to stay in a position where they can reward their stockholders. I don't disagree with Anna about the problem with ACO-REACH. Anna knows that we were focused on ACO-REACH in all of 2022, and we do agree that that's a problem. We came to the conclusion that Medicare Advantage was a bigger problem because it was about to take over the entire Medicare system, and we decided we had to focus on that. That's all I want to say about that.
Hey, can I just hand up? It was interesting about just on the horizon. The only person who ever had a Republican who had a plan that they put down on paper was Dr. Oz, and basically it was Medicare Advantage for all. They were going to add a 10% tax on payroll, or 20%, 10% employers, 10% employees. So if you may hear the phrase Medicare Advantage for all as again another sort of confusing sort of phrasing that might go out there. I just finished one of those articles that comes across about why do people vote for tax decreases for the rich, i.e. why do people vote against their financial interest? And there was the four ideas. They don't understand that they're voting against their financial interest. They think they may one day themselves be rich and therefore don't want to poison the well, shall we say, because they may get there, even though the chance is only 2%, 1 out of 50 chance of getting in the top 1%, shall we say. But the two things that seem to make the difference was the rubric of fairness and reference pointing. In other words, if they say the taxes used to be 70% in World War II, and now they're down to 33 or 30% for the top category. So a reference phrasing. The other thing is that vague term of fairness. And so again, how are you going to take Medicare Advantage away from grandma, right? Because you better not take Medicare Advantage away from grandma, because grandma's going to be really angry, and she's going to say that as we run across in the meetings and stuff like this. The fact that Medicare Advantage is cheap to get into, but expensive to use.
in a sense, it's the same thing that private insurance is, or at least as once you're employed, it's cheaper to get into because the employer is paying 2/3 of that premium. Or my marketplace plan is cheap to get into, but again, too expensive to use, too expensive to get sick. So I'm still struggling with the idea. If it's the whole idea is because what you're going to run up against is, again, don't take away my Medicare Advantage, even though it's Medicare for poor people. At least it's Medicare for poor people. And so the idea is, how do you get it to? Well, we want to give Medicare for everybody, the poor, the middle, and the rich, and it's all going to be the same, and everybody's going to have the same card with the same deductibles, copays, $5, whatever you want to do, zero, and it's all going to be it's all going to be fair for everybody, because right now it's not fair. It's not fair for the poor because they get shafted when they get sick. Since it's two-tier, Medicare is now two-tier. You have a two-tier system for the poor, for everybody below who can't afford it, and everybody above who can afford a gap plan. So it's not fair. And the other kind of reference point is the idea that insurance companies make the most money off of the perverse incentives of Medicare Advantage, of Part C insurance. So the argument, I don't think you're going to win the argument with grandma who says, don't take away my zero premium Medicare Advantage, and I'm not sick yet. Unless you sort of use other phraseology and sort of get to those basic rubrics of fairness, reference pointing, all those kind of, high-end, theory type stuff that academics, when they do studies, trying to understand why people vote against their financial interest. So again, I'm just struggling with and there was the juice of listening to how would you sell it differently to that elders meeting, because you can't just say insurance companies are ripping you off or they're ripping off the nation. I'm just looking for other ways to phrase it and work it, and just those are sort of sharing phrases that may or may not work at your next elders at your next over 65 meeting. I just want to say, Hank, that that was precisely why we came up with the notion of leveling the playing field, because that's something that people understand is making things fair.